Hi, everyone. As we get started, maybe we could use the chat to say hello and where you are joining from. So nice to see you all today and seeing some familiar faces on the screen and also some new ones. So glad you can join us. Oh, yes, a lot of tired and sad Blue Jay fans. That was a long game last night and a heartbreaker. My goodness. Well, welcome to today's colloquium. I know that there's probably still a couple people trickling in, but we are so glad to have you join us for the International Humanistic Management Association Colloquium Series. And I know that Michael Pearson is on the call right now, and I believe he wanted to say a special shout out hello to get us kicked off. So, Michael, if you're ready.
Well, thank you. I didn't necessarily have to do this, but I just wanted to use the opportunity and thank you all for being here. So many familiar faces and new friends. So thank you so much for being here, joining, etc. And it's a pleasure to have Ayşe Yemiscigil, a wonderful colleague, present to us today. And thank you so much, Kristen, for doing this. So I just wanted to say thank you and hello, and then hand it over back to you. Thanks.
Sure. Well, with our colloquium series, you know that this is that tight lunch hour window. And so we want to save as much time as possible for the speaker. So I just want to do a brief introduction, and then we'll have about 30 minutes of presentation and about 30 minutes of Q&A. So Dr. Ayşe Yemiscigil is a faculty member at Fordham University. She's a professor of organizational behavior and is also a research affiliate with Harvard University's Human Flourishing Program.
Yeah.
And probably the thing that we all love and know most about her is she is the driving force behind this entire colloquium series. So for a couple years now, she's been coordinating all the speakers, bringing us this great calendar of events. And we are just so delighted to turn the cameras around this week and hear about her research on leadership and well-being. So Ayşe, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kristen and Michael. It's been my joy to be a part of this series and to contribute to it. And now today I'm on the other side instead of being the host, being the presenter, and super excited about it. Thank you all for making the time in the middle of your busy days. I will start my screen share and dive right in without wasting any more time. All right. To make the best out of this hour. So today, my talk is going to focus on the mental health and well-being of leaders. And I want to, before I start talking about ideas and findings, want to acknowledge my co-authors in this project because this has been a project that lasted many, many years, and we collected lots of data and so many people were involved in it. And I especially want to thank my co-author Dana Bourne from Harvard Kennedy School, and Diego Arias from University of Detroit, and Horace Ling, who is at Northeastern right now. So this work is our joint work together. And just to give you an idea of the scale of this project, we've been surveying 13 cohorts of senior leaders who participated in a senior executive leadership program. And we also, through them, surveyed a matched control group who just maintained their regular work schedules during the program. So we had a group of leaders who were being educated and developing, and a group of leaders who weren't. And we applied longitudinal, quantitative, and qualitative surveys before and after the program. And by after, we have a short-term survey follow-up at 2 weeks and a 7-month survey follow-up. That's the time tree. So altogether, this is kind of the design. I wanted to give you an overview, and I will focus on just the ideas in the rest of the presentation. And let's move forward here. Why did we start this project? Why did we undertake so much effort? What are we trying to discover? So one of the growing trends in management is the well-being of the workforce, right? There has been a significant decline in the general mental health and well-being of employees worldwide, and this has motivated many scholars to better understand what's going on, what drives employee well-being, how can we promote it. These questions have become important. And it's also well-being is central for humanistic management theory and practice as well. But what has caught up maybe drawn less attention has been the well-being of leaders. And by leaders, I want to be clear, I'm talking about people who occupy leadership roles, formal leadership roles in organizations. They hold responsibilities as a supervisor, as a manager, as a director. And these individuals' well-being have received less attention in scholarship. But in fact, and maybe one assumption is there is that they have more privileges of power, resources, and so leaders should be doing well. And it's the employees we need to focus on. But research shows that leaders' well-being can also be challenged, and their job has unique demands like responsibility over subordinates and organizational, societal, sometimes decision-making. These can be unique stressors that undermine leader well-being. And in fact, when we look at Gallup's 2025 report, we see that the manager well-being in general has been in decline as well. From 30%, the engagement has been falling from 30% to 27%. And for especially managers who are younger, there was a steeper decline. For female managers, there was even a steeper decline. So as we can see that managers are not exempt from the mental health and well-being crisis. And what's more, when our managers are doing well, when they are psychologically well functioning, the impact that they have can really spill over across the organization. There has been a lot of research lately showing that when managers with greater mental health, they treat employees much differently, with dignity, with respect. They're more optimistic and supportive in their engagements. And they can, not only within an organization, but even outside of the organization, societal decision making, right? They can make more pro-socially oriented, responsible decisions when leaders are in a good state of mind. So this was our motivation. Let's just use our extensive sample to understand what's going on with leader well-being and how can we cultivate it in an educational context. All right, so what do we know? What do we know from research so far? So there has been quite a few studies trying to understand, are leaders better or worse off than employees? Like, is there a leadership advantage or a disadvantage? And the findings there have been quite mixed. It's hard to make a conclusion if leaders are generally reporting lower or greater well-being. But one thing that has been clear and probably more conclusive is that when the leader well-being is most impacted by demand. So when leaders have a lot of demands, their well-being is undermined. But when they have personal resources like sense of control, agency, support, then they report higher well-being. So the general conclusion was that being a leader may be a mixed blessing. They may have good resources, and in that case, they're better off, but they may also have more demands, and then the well-being can be in decline. But the real question is, okay, this is like a snapshot of leader well-being, but how can we support it? How can we intentionally cultivate these capacities so that leaders can promote well-being. And for that, we need to look at intervention studies. And intervention studies are hard to do, especially with leaders in organizations, and they are not plenty. They've been limited. But some of the existing studies have focused on behavioral strategies, like little things that leaders can do in the course of a day to boost their mood, to give them a bit more energy, like reflecting on positive aspects of their self, reflecting on positive aspects of their life, and so on. And of course, it's promising, there are good effects for that, but the effects are short term, right? It's within a day, within the next day, maybe at most. So it's a mood boost. And well-being can be way more than that, right? It can be when it's not only about just happiness and pleasure in the moment, but it can be more eudaimonically oriented, like having a sense of meaning and purpose in life, or having a good sense of personal growth. So there are so many other ways of looking at well-being, especially when we consider the long-term, more enduring changes that we can create in leaders. So that's why we thought that developmental interventions, so educational interventions, when leaders are developing capacities that they can maintain over a longer period of time, or resources that they can maintain over a longer period of time, can be promising for creating these more enduring changes in well-being, rather than just one-off short-term impact. So where we looked at leadership development as an intervention here. And when we think about leadership development, most research and maybe most practice as well is adopting a functionalist view of it. So we focus on leadership development as an avenue for creating performance. How can we make leaders more effective in their jobs, more productive, right? Those kind of professional skills. But leadership, when we think about what it is and what it entails, it's not about technical skills necessarily. It's a more broadly generalized interpersonal skills are involved in leadership. So the leadership development interventions often focus on skills like self-awareness, communication, decision-making, agency. So all of these skills are not only professional skills, they impact the whole person. They can be applied at work. They can also be applied in personal life, with family, and with friends. So leadership development is in fact relevant as a whole person activity. And there's been a recent study that just came out and interviewing why leaders participate in leadership development. And what they find is that, yes, there are some who participate for work performance, but a significant number of leaders participate in leadership development for personal growth. They want to see themselves grow, their whole life change. So this kind of highlighted the importance the need of a humanistic perspective on leadership development that acknowledges the whole person identity of leaders and their broad context of life, and how they are changing, evolving, and benefiting as a whole person. So we suspected that because of the nature of leadership development, because of this whole person emphasis, leaders can draw not only professional but also personal resources and improve their well-being by participating in leadership development programs. So we had several predictions here, and number one was one of the resources that leaders gain are the skills, and the kind of like generalized skills that we just talked about. Those skills can help leaders manage work and non-work demands in their life and reduce stress, overall stress. And another prediction we had is that by engaging in these activities, by most leadership programs especially involve a lot of self-reflection opportunities, right? The self-awareness component. So as they gain perspective through those reflections on what matters to them and clarify personal professional goals, leaders can improve their sense of purpose in life. And also they can see themselves growing not only professionally, but also personally, becoming more effective at work, at home, with families, and knowing themselves better. This can create a sense of personal growth in leaders. These were our predictions. But in order to test these predictions, we had to answer a kind of range of questions that are complementary and that provided even richer and more general insights about leader well-being. So first, before we understand the impact of leadership development, we wanted to understand, but how does leaders' well-being change over time in the natural course of life when they are not supported for their development? This was kind of setting up our control group, our counterfactual, to understand the effects of our intervention. And then second question was, okay, does leadership development really improve? Is there tangible, measurable improvement in leader well-being? And why? What really creates those effects? Another important question, which is rarely addressed because longitudinal studies are hard to design, how long do the effects last and why? Right? Like, let's go beyond short-term effects and to long-term understanding, sustainability of these positive changes. And finally, we also could explore, because our sample was so large, we measured and tested and explored a lot of moderators, boundary conditions. So individual differences like leaders' personality, demographic factors, age, gender, race, and even contextual factors like the pandemic and in-person and online. Do they play a role? Do they really change the impacts that we see? And because our research design lasted over about 5 years, I think, with multiple cohorts over time, we had the kind of unique advantage of seeing the pandemic unfold in the meantime, and the program for that period changed into online as opposed to in person. So those provided these like natural variations that helped us explore some of these factors. All right. So I will now go into what we have discovered. All right, 1 second. This is so first let's talk about the control group, leaders who go about their life naturally, they go to work, what's happening there. What we found there is, remember, this is like a 7 month, so there's a short-term impact, short-term change, and then a long-term change. And over the course of these 7 months, the control group showed no changes in stress. So their stress was pretty stable, but they reported a decline in their sense of personal growth and purpose in life. So we collected qualitative data to understand why, how do they explain these changes in their well-being? We didn't say what we find. We just asked them, what do you think has contributed to changes in your well-being in the last months? Why? Can you please explain? And what we find is that, and this is, I love this question because it is open-ended, right? Like, and well-being can be about anything. And when we even think about theories of well-being, it's like why a person may report higher or lower, so many things can go into it. So what we discovered here was really what's coming up for leaders themselves. What do they consider as most important in shaping their well-being? And what we found is that it was all about external circumstances and environmental demands. So work and non-work events that change their demand dynamics. So I want to give some examples here. One of our leaders have said, my personal growth has been impacted by the deterioration of my relationship with my son, by my role as co-parenting with my husband as a stepmom, and by being a leader at my work. Or another leader said, my sense of purpose has grown as the expected date of my birth of our first child approaches, and I continue to build my new role within our company. Another said, my stress levels have increased due to the change of environments at home and at work, unexpected issues and repairs in my home, a possible change in employment, and high levels of scrutiny in my current workplace have all contributed to my increase in stress levels. So what we see here is, first of all, the human side of leaders, right? It's not only about what's happening at work, but it's also a lot of what's happening in personal life that's impacting their well-being. And we also see this like emphasis on external events, right? It's not about me and what I do, but it is about what happens to me. And sometimes if it's a positive event, I feel, stronger purpose or better stress. But if it's a negative event, then I see the opposite trends. So this was very interesting, and that was one of our first kind of notable findings from this research. And I'll continue now to see how we found the answer for the question, like, but okay, does it make a difference to support leaders' development? And the answer is yes, it does in the short term. A couple weeks after the leader development intervention, there was a reduction in stress, there was an increase in sense of purpose in life, and also an increase in personal growth. You can see here in this graph, it's the black columns. That's a comparison between how the treatment group changed versus the control group. And the dark gray one is the treatment group. So there's a 0.25 stress reduction, which is pretty good amount of stress reduction coming from the course, and 0.17 standard deviation effect size, increase in growth, personal growth, and relatively smaller increase in sense of purpose in life, but still statistically significant. And given that the control group was already decreasing in some of these, the change difference is pretty high. So these are hopeful, promising results. But we had some hypotheses about why they may occur. But since we collected the qualitative data, we could also answer from the point of the leaders themselves, how do they explain why their well-being changes? What contributed in this developmental intervention to these outcomes? So here there are several conclusions. There's maybe surprising things that we discovered, let me say. One of them was, they could again have referred to anything they wanted that happened in the program. And what came up most frequently in the answers was how much leaders appreciated opportunities for self-reflection. So statements like, the program helped me think about what I want, what my priorities are, why am I doing what I'm doing at work and in my life. It seemed like leaders really craved that opportunity for taking a step back and seeing the big picture and gaining perspective on their lives. And this wasn't only for purpose, but it also was coming up a lot in questions on stress, growth. So it kind of permeated across all types of well-being outcomes. And another surprising factor was the break from work. And that amplified, that contributed to the perspective, their ability to see the big picture. So for one leader has said, the program gave me the break I needed at the right time in my career. It allowed me to take a step back, reflect, refresh, and recharge. Right. We've seen a couple of these kind of remarks, so highlighting that the break from work was a huge factor. And another surprising thing we discovered was the sense of agency. So we didn't really measure sense of agency in this research. If we knew, we would have. It would have really been nice to have some measurement of it, but compared to control group, right, who were always talking about what happened to them at work or outside of work, leaders who have developed themselves were talking about what they did to the environment, how they enacted changes, how they gained control over their personal functioning, over the things that happen in their lives. So a sense of agency was kind of this like emerging factor, especially comparing the control group and treatment group narratives of the psychological mechanism of why leaders may benefit from developing themselves. They also had demands. Many leaders in the treatment group have also mentioned that they had demands, the negative events, but they also reported they felt capable of dealing with them. All right, so this is too much going on in this slide, but to also just give you an idea, there were more coming up from this analysis. And of course, when the program also clearly delivers knowledge, and many people appreciated the knowledge that they gained. And there was the effect of social interactions and support, how the support they got from faculty, or the kind of observing, getting to know other people from different walks of life, how that contributed to their growth and well-being. So there were a couple more factors going on here. All right, and one other thing that was really this whole person phenomenon that we talked about, it was evident in most of the statements. So I want to give one example here. In the program, I identified opportunities to improve the way I engage with others on my team and to recognize opportunities to engage more effectively with my teenagers, to support them in their decision making. So people have learned the skills, they applied it not only at work, but also in their private lives, personal lives. And a lot of them talked about these like balancing of personal and private. The program allowed me to put things in perspective and keep a bird's eye view of things. The work responsibilities continue as well as my family responsibilities. However, I feel more confident and empowered to tackle them. And another leader said, prior to the program, I tried to make everything a priority. Now I am narrowing that scope and putting my time and energy and efforts in the few things that are truly important to me. The program helped me see how my personal and professional life can work together. So these are some of the, more enriched perspectives on how leaders themselves experience their learning and how did they explain the changes in their well-being in an educational context. All right. And another question we answered here was about the duration of the effects. Surprise, surprise, effects disappeared at 7 months, and we see this kind of reversal to baseline a lot in well-being interventions. It's a treadmill effect. Sometimes it's also called adaptation, but we've seen it at 7 months here. No matter how transformative the initial remarks were, right? It's like my life changed. We've seen a lot of them. But those changes did not really seem to persist at 7 months after the program. And when we look at the qualitative data, we started to see more and more the demands creeping in, right? And then it became again about what happened to me as opposed to what I did with what happened to me. All right. And just final notes about like, did we see any differences here based on demographic? No. Everyone seemed to have benefited from the program when we look at the socio-demographic factors. Well, we found some differences based on personality. High conscientiousness predicted lower increases in well-being. So one explanation for that could be that conscientious people are already excuse me, effective at managing their life, maybe. That could be a possibility. And leaders with high neuroticism or emotional variability, they experience larger benefits, especially in terms of stress. And so that's hopeful because it means that the well-being effects work even better for those who need it for dispositional reasons, right? Some leaders are more prone to stress due to their disposition, and leadership development can make a more difference for those leaders. We also found smaller reductions in stress with leaders with high openness. And we're suspecting this is speculation, but it's possible that for those leaders, the program environment, although it can be enhancing for well-being, also overly stimulating potentially, and which may disrupt their stress experiences. And we did not find differences based on pandemic and in-person and online programming. There were some trends, but they're not really as remarkable. And but the project wasn't designed to test this, so we don't want to kind of push so much forward with these conclusions. But they are kind of interesting to see, nevertheless, that there weren't that many differences based on the contextual factor. So there was really something going on in the program and the experience as opposed to other. Okay, so some conclusions, and I'm happy to answer questions right after this. What are we learning from this research? First of all, that we look at leadership development as a professional development activity, but it is way more than that. It can be way more than that. So there's a place and time and need for humanistic orientation in leadership development, acknowledging leaders as human beings with personal, professional lives, needing to grow themselves, holistically, right? This is much more craved by senior leaders, especially who need the space, time, and support for deep reflection and transformation, holistic transformation. And we find that it's possible to create such transformation, like tangibly created. But at the same time, although these effects are, of course, more enduring than just a mood boost in a given day, they are still not as longer lasting as we want them to be. And so this treadmill effect is really important, that the demand creep in, right? And so the support for development needs to be intentional and continuous. So from a developmental perspective, integrating more innovative approaches like refreshment, a sense of community to continue after the education can be very critical. I'll stop right here. This is all I have said. I'm happy to answer questions. Kristen, I think you're muted.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. We do have a couple questions that came up in the chat, so maybe we could start there. Ravi, would you like to ask your question out loud to the group?
You could read it out.
Oh, okay.
You could read it out. You would be better. Your voice would be better than mine. Yeah.
Oh, your voice is wonderful.
Okay, then since the ball is back in my court, I put it in the chat. So if I misspeak, you can go back and read it. Your findings are very interesting and are reinforced by the whole stream of literature on work-life balance and its link to stress in one's life. There's a whole body of knowledge out there, and I think it'll be prudent on your part to link your piece to that whole bandwagon that has already been done. But what I anticipated, because this is IHMA seminar, the whole emphasis is on spiritual, humanistic, more than the economic perspective, job stability, and those kinds of things. And as individuals gain more knowledge, more education as they age and as they experience more in life, then they take on more broader reframing of their life expectations, moving beyond economics to include spirituality, humanism, and so forth. And I think Mike Pearson is very eloquent in talking about the non-economic aspects of framing one's life expectations. So I was really anticipating that you would really uncover or bring to surface some of those reframing of these leaders as a result of your experiment here, which is an intervention. You have a treatment group and you have a control group, and the treatment group has been given a pill and they swallowed it. And so is there any such reframing of their life's expectations? That's my question. Have you uncovered anything in broadening of their reframing, broadening of their and that might help in also explaining why their stress levels are the way you found them to be. Yeah. Sorry if I misspoke. Go back and read my.
It makes perfect sense. Just 1 second. 1 second, the background noise.
Yeah.
All right. I understand the question, and it's a really important question. I wish we had measured it quantitatively, and we did not. But we can. So in the qualitative data, we can infer some of those changes in the sense that we could have seen maybe leaders mentioning things like, now I am more purpose-driven, or I want to prioritize the well-being of others or society. I'm clear about it. Those kind of statements. So in a way, most of the purpose questions, they do have that tendency in the sense that they are more clear about the purpose of their work, what kind of impact that they want to have on the world. So qualitative statements get at that a little bit, but it's not like super, super strong maybe, that could be because these are public leaders. Maybe I think 60-50% of our sample were already leaders who work in the public sector, and they were already very purpose-driven in some way. There wasn't that much economistic leadership in our sample. And yeah, so maybe it wasn't the particular change for them because they were already quite humanistically driven in that respect. But we can look back at that qualitative data with that lens again and ask that question. Do we see a change? We definitely see a change of giving up, achievement orientation, right? Like giving up the focus on external rewards, the focus on professional expectations, and a bit, focusing more on the inner side and the inner development. That's kind of evident in the data. Maybe that speaks a bit to your question too, Ravi.
Great. Diana Perez Archidera.
Yeah, thanks
Would
for
you like to ask
providing
yours?
with it. Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was curious to know a bit more about the intervention itself. So what kind of activities you propose? What were the objectives? I don't know, a little overlook on that.
Yes, that's true. I actually should have included a slide on that. So it was a 4-week program in a North American school. There were many. I have an image for that, but maybe it will be hard to pull it right now. We have it in the paper, but not in the presentation. And there are some technical courses. It's a very course-based programming, right? Like they leaders take courses during the 4 weeks full time in person. They leave their jobs, and there are technical courses like data analytics and a few of them, or national policy or governance and so on. And then a lot of the courses are more generalized skill oriented, like communication, authenticity, decision making, ethics, ethical decision making. Like that's a long list. And at the same time, there were opportunities for mentoring opportunities, peer mentoring opportunities throughout the program. Well, people could, have more structured time with each other, supporting each other, and also, meetings with faculty in that same way, trying to get support from faculty, and an orientation and a goodbye. That was more or less it's not generally the feedback we get is like it's a typical program in some way, leadership development program that you may find in a higher education. But there, I think the more extracurricular building, social activities, a couple of them, people coming together and hanging out, they were organized, and the mentoring maybe was the one that deviates more from the curriculum. Thank you for the
Okay, thank
question.
you.
Amrita, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. My question was about when you were doing the research finding, was there any connection between emotional volatility, reactivity of the leaders? When you use the word stress, I found it to be more generalized. Was there any specific nuanced, findings? Like the leaders said that before there was high reactivity and volatility in my behavior, and post the program it contained them, something on that front, or yeah. So first question is on that, if you can respond to that.
Yes, there were so many reports in the qualitative open-ended question site that talks about being more balanced emotionally. It's hard for me to say exactly if that's what they said, but definitely a trend towards being more balanced, being more at peace, experiencing less reactivity, for example. It came out like, right, when something happens, how reactive you are. So yes, the short answer is yes. And that may be the reason why leaders with high neuroticism benefited in terms of their stress results way more than others.
Okay, and my second question to you was about sponsorship, gaining sponsorship. So, for example, if the leadership team which approves, these intervention, if, those leaders had mechanistic or functionalistic point of views, rather than focusing more on the being, style of leadership or humanistic style of leadership, one may experience conflict, right? So, was there any challenge like that?
I didn't understand. What do you mean by sponsorship?
So, when, leadership development program, for example, I look at this research and I say that, okay, can I use this context in this research in my context? And when you are trying to use some research findings, you have to seek or convince the sponsors of the program in the leadership development space, right? Those who give a nod or a go ahead on the program.
Oh, yeah. So for conducting this research,
Not for conducting. For example, if I use this, so how do you convince the senior leadership or the people who are in the approving position, who are having a contrarian point of view? If there is misalignment on the humanistic part of it, what Ravi was mentioning.
for leaders in our sample, if they experienced in their work a conflict.
No. So, for example, you have used this. If I have to propose this research finding, they may dismiss the research by saying that humanistic approach may not be the right approach in this organization.
Okay, I understand now. So if so you're saying that if you want to convince an organization to do a humanistically oriented educational program, and you're saying, look, the findings are here. Here are all the benefits. If you really take this approach, this is what you may get. And would that kind of be convincing, or would that hit some?
Yeah, did you face any challenge on that front, more from the point of view of, when there is a contrast, in the decision-making team?
Yeah, so we didn't. I mean, generally the reactions to the research has been positive. I guess it there is a bit of I haven't seen any resistance because the findings are pretty convincing, and maybe that's the benefit of doing this kind of research, especially the quantitative data. And like we've published from this research HBR articles talking about like consider well-being as a new return on investment of your leadership development program. You may not have thought about this because you're looking at, you're running a program and then you're measuring certain maybe performance changes and you don't see an effect. But that doesn't mean the program has been ineffective. Maybe there has been a more inner change or personal change that you're not accounting for that still contributed leaders, appreciation, connection with the organization, and maybe that may yield longer term effects. So definitely, I think like the results, especially the quantitative part, because the organizations tend to be more convinced by quantitative data, and also the large sample showing that everyone benefited from it. There wasn't a group that was particularly uninterested or backfired, right? That's also a good finding. So generally, that should give good arguments for creating more interest, you're right, for leadership development approaches that emphasize that humanistic side.
Great, thank you so much.
And we have a question in the chat from Oscar. Oscar, would you like to ask this directly?
I'm afraid also of those but there is a difficult, at least in Mexico. I'm from Monterrey, and to get the access to the leaders, and they maintain the course of the research. How can you advise for us to obtain that collaboration that you have?
Yeah, that is a great question. And we have been blessed here by having dedicated, like the people who run the program are very convinced and dedicated on the importance of evidence for supporting their impact, communicating their impact. So I think that kind of buy-in from the program, like from the educators, is not everyone values evidence to the same extent and or even are as convinced by it to the same extent. So there was a lot of like support from the program itself, like willingness to go above and beyond. And actually Horace Link and Dana Bourne were all, really putting a lot of effort on that as well. So that was one. And so the program people, the program directors believing in the importance of evidence because they are the ones who can motivate people to respond, right? Like they have the connection to the participants. They have a relationship, genuine relationship with them. They can ask for, responding to survey. And if that relationship is strong, and if the program people are really adamant about it, that you can get. But it's not easy. And I actually had many failed interventions like this as well. So this was unique in that commitment that comes from the program directors and the program team in general, and the relationships that they had with the leaders themselves.
And we have a hand up from PMIRV.
Yes, thank you very much. So Ayşe, given the results that you obtained, modest impact on stress, on my sense of self and personal purpose in life, not sustained. If you were to design a program explicitly focused on well-being and sort of more enduring change, what would you do differently?
Such a great question as well. And so, in one hand, the fact that this program was not directly targeting well-being, I think was a plus because people, there is a growing cynicism around interventions that target well-being interventions that organizations initiate. Those interventions are seen as detached from the actual day-to-day work. And especially there's been research coming out showing that leaders may be particularly hesitant in joining those interventions because there is that expectation that the leaders should be put together, should be all mentally well anyways. Do they even need a well-being support, right? So so leaders may be more hesitant in joining those well-being, especially senior ones, those interventions organized by so this kind of hybrid, in a way, whole person approach, I think that where you're essentially targeting professional development, but as part of it, there are things in there that address the whole person, I think is a good strategy for organizations. So I would first advocate for that before proposing like a purely well-being intervention for the reasons that I described. But if it was going to be just a focus on well-being, I would lean way more on that self-reflection piece. I think it's a huge need. People are so thirsty, hungry, craving of the kind of spaces they can connect with themselves and with their lives without the pressure of achievement or expectations or rewards or other social influences. So that connection to provide people that connection, that space, time, support, the right questions, so that they can feel what matters to them. They can sense their in life in a way unfolding. So I would lean more into those kind of programs that integrate like deep self-reflection and transformation. And it could be sometimes it could be more contemplative in some way, in a more explicit way, or not. But yeah, that could probably be and the break, right? And to give people not like a coffee break, but a day break, retreats, or so on. So that break is critical too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Ayşe, I have a question. Did you have any kind of counter cases of people who maybe experienced some or reported some harms or negative effects of this leadership journey?
Not really. Maybe there was like the load, some people perceived the education as just an added task. I guess that could be maybe the closest to what you're referring to. And so instead of thinking it as a resource, as a break, they approached it as like just one more thing to do. And I think for them, in their responses, the experience was not as great as for others. And it's a curiosity, where does that mindset come from, where you're giving exact same experience to two people, and one of them think this is phenomenal, and I'm and then for them it's just like, why do I guess we've all been there sometimes. The self-care things we do can also turn into a chore. Yeah, that would be an excellent research question. When do we tip that in some way?
Are there other questions? I know we've got some comments in here too, from Ken Sagendorf and Ken Nishikawa. Ken, do you want to?
Oh yes, it's just idea. So when I listen to your presentation, here's some idea comes up in my mind. So it seems to be job crafting. In other words, so leadership crafting. On the job crafting, probably you may know well about what the job crafting, but in the leadership crafting means, so in working place, so people have a special treatment, and so on the job they think about who might be as a leader, or as a self, as a human being, and a family member, or a community member. So all things are put together to create from a cognitive side and a human relationship side, and so practical job side as a leader. So those things could be create more practical way of leadership development, which means leadership crafting.
Yeah.
Just my comment.
Yeah. And we've seen that, Ken, in the data. Definitely, there were quotes that indicate that leaders were more capable in crafting, in being agents of change in their environment.
Yes.
And that included quite a few remarks on job crafting, is being able to prioritize what matters. Now I'm doing things that are important, and feeling powerful to be able to do that kind of job crafting was definitely in the data.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And we've got time for about two more comments. So Ken Sagendorf, and then we'll conclude with Dr. Shoemaker.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ayşe, for the research. Really interesting. I had commented that I'm in the midst of my sabbatical research, looking at a post 18-month development program, whether people are choosing to leave their institution for another role, or stay in their institution, take a promotion, I'm really after what's happening around shared leadership, but related to your research, one of the interesting things that I'm in a conversation about is the framing of the development opportunity itself. I'm finding that a lot of people thought of it, well, a lot of people didn't know why they were chosen and selected to go. And so that was really interesting. So the framing of why we do leadership development and its intent, I think, is an important thing for us to look at. The second thing is many of them thought they were going to school. So the mix of the more hard versus more self-care skills. A lot of them thought they were going back to school and they were going to get a large load of content as opposed to the real deep kind of out of person experience that was teaching them more about themselves. So the people that are staying, I'm finding that they are really ready because of the self-care to share leadership as opposed to take it on like the folks that chose to leave. So yeah, just thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, and thank you for your comments, Ken. And it's interesting, yeah, right? The expectations is interesting, right? What do they come for, and what are they leaving with? And definitely, maybe it speaks a little bit to that functionalist, humanistic angle. And even when you come for, okay, for performance, you may leave with more than that, and it seems like that's a positive surprise for everybody. Not people aren't bothered by the fact that they can appreciate that growth nevertheless. Yeah, and that's I guess good news for all humanistic management scholars, right? That when presented with the opportunity, and to the earlier discussion, to like should it be a pure well-being intervention or not? Like sometimes maybe there's a cynicism when we frame something as come and develop your sense of humanity, come and develop your sense of well-being. Maybe it puts some economistically oriented, individuals, workers, leaders off, and they resist. But when there's something more general and in the framing that is kind of holistic, it can invite people, and it looks like, and this program was one of them. The title wasn't "Come and Join a Humanistic Leadership Development." It was an executive education program, right? Like very clear. It's a professional experience, and yet we did not see a single person who said, I did not, like, despite these kind of personal experiences, I did not like what I'm having. So that's, I guess, good news for everyone.
Yeah, if I can add real quickly, Isa, I think one of the things that I found in the development opportunity was when they were put in what felt like a powerless opportunity, not helpless, but where they weren't supposed to do something, they could just experience it. Right. I mean, and this was an immersion. And so they, a lot of people have talked about the feeling okay not to step in and change something. And that opportunity really provided them with that insight that you mentioned.
Interesting. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Kat.
And we have a final comments from Dr. Marty Shoemaker.
Well, thanks for this recognition, because I'd like to expand what Ken has said. I think our experience here in teaching organizational development courses and working with management, that the two variables that really affect their evaluation of this are two things. One, why were you asked to come? Or why did you attend this workshop in the first place? What were your motivations? And you have to link those with the course in some way at the beginning. And if you don't, it's just wasted effort on their behalf. The second one is, and I put this in the chat, and that is the support they have of their immediate superior in taking this course, and then involving them at the end of the course in the gains and in their behaviors that they would like to see reinforced at work. And if they got their boss on side, it was tremendously effective. But if they didn't, then it often was just lost in the mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. So in our sample, no one was, there was voluntary, it was a voluntary participation. So I guess it could have been different if people were sent out or forced into this kind of programming. We may have different result, and that's a really good point. And maybe some of the few people who were in the program who were thinking of it as kind of an added chore could have been in some way, not explicitly, but maybe subconsciously, implicitly, have been forced to be there by someone in the workplace or something. So yeah, that is a great point, and I agree. I think it is important to map the motivations, but at the same time to also leave room for surprise effects. I don't know, when I'm teaching, one of my most favorites, maybe it's a biased comment, but my most favorite evaluations at the end of the course is like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. I didn't see this coming. And, we are teaching also undergrad humanistic management course, and students say, oh, I was expecting I'm just going to learn management, but I ended up becoming a better human being. And that's kind of my, it makes my year and day and month, really. So yeah, that is, and Marty, thank you so much for prompting this, but I want to also share one last maybe quote that I love that motivates me to do this research, and maybe some of us too. So it's from one of the early leadership scholars, Warren Bennis, and he said that becoming a leadership is wait, let me make sure that I want to. The process of becoming a leader is much the same as the process of becoming an integrated human being. I think we all have a passion for developing leaders. Because we also see them become better human beings, not only good in their jobs, but also holistically as a whole, for themselves, for their families, for the world. So that keeps us going, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you, Ayşe.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
hosting
much
me.
for your presentation today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And save the date, mark your calendars. The final colloquium of the fall semester will be Tuesday, November 18th at noon Eastern Time. So hope to see you all there. And thank you again for sharing part of your day with us.
Thank you for having me and for all your amazing questions and your hosting, Kristen.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.